Creek was a small, forgotten town nestled deep within the woods of New England. With its population dwindling and businesses closing, it was the kind of place people left, not moved to. But for Mark and Emily Johnson, it was the perfect place to start over. They were a young couple eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life, seeking peace and tranquility in the countryside. They purchased an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town, a sprawling two-story relic from the 1800s. The house was in disrepair with creaky floors, cracked windows, and an overgrown yard, but the couple saw potential. As they began renovations, the locals shared cryptic warnings and stories about the house's dark past, tales that Mark and Emily dismissed as mere superstition. The farmhouse had once belonged to the Vandervoort family, one of the town's founding families. According to legend, the family had vanished under mysterious circumstances in the late 19th century. Whispers of witchcraft, curses, and restless spirits lingered in the town, but these stories only added to the house's charm for Mark and Emily. As the couple settled into their new home, strange occurrences began to unfold. At first, it was subtle, a cold draft despite the summer heat, flickering lights, and the feeling of being watched. Emily, who was more attuned to these oddities, began hearing whispers at night, soft and indistinct, but undeniably real. One evening, while exploring the basement, Mark discovered an old, dusty trunk filled with family heirlooms and an ornate journal belonging to Abigail Vandervoort. The journal chronicled the family's descent into madness, filled with cryptic entries about dark rituals and a malevolent entity that had cursed their bloodline. As Mark read aloud from the journal, a cold wind swept through the basement, extinguishing the light. Emily felt a presence, something ancient and malevolent lurking in the shadows. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and she saw fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures out of the corner of her eye. Determined to uncover the truth, the couple sought out the town's historian, Mr. Whitaker. He revealed that the Vandervoorts were believed to have practiced black magic, summoning a demonic entity that eventually consumed them. The entity bound to the house had been lying dormant, feeding on the fear and despair of its inhabitants. Whitaker warned them that the entity could not be banished easily. It thrived on fear, growing stronger with each passing day. The only way to break the curse was to confront it directly, using the rituals described in Abigail's journal. As night fell, Mark and Emily prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary ingredients and drawing protective symbols around the house. The air grew thick with tension, and the whispers turned to screams echoing through the halls. They began the ritual, chanting the ancient incantations from Abigail's journal. Temperature dropped, and a dark, shadowy figure emerged from the walls, its eyes burning with malevolent fire. The entity moved towards Emily, who stood her ground, her voice steady as she continued the incantation. The house shook violently, and ghostly apparitions of the Vandervoort family appeared, their faces twisted in agony. Mark, despite his fear, joined Emily in the chant, their voices rising above the cacophony of screams. The entity roared, its form shifting and twisting, but it could not break the protective barrier. With a final ear-piercing shriek, the entity was pulled back into the darkness and the house fell silent. But the victory was short-lived. The entity, though weakened, was not vanquished. It began to play tricks on their minds, turning their dreams into nightmares and their thoughts into a labyrinth of paranoia and fear. Emily woke up one night to find herself standing in the kitchen, a knife in her hand, and no recollection of how she got there. Mark started seeing shadows move in the corner of his eyes, always disappearing when he turned to look. The couple was on the brink of a mental breakdown. Desperate for a solution, Mark and Emily delved deeper into the history of the Vandervoort family. They learned about a secret room in the house hidden behind a false wall in the attic. This room, they discovered, was the source of the curse. Inside the hidden room, they found an altar covered in strange symbols, surrounded by more journals and grimoires. The room felt colder than the rest of the house, and the air was thick with malevolence. As they read through the grimoires, they realized that the only way to banish the entity was to perform a dangerous ancient ritual that required a sacrifice. With no other options, Mark and Emily decided to go through with the ritual. They gathered everything they needed and began the preparations. The night of the ritual, the house seemed to come alive, groaning and creaking as if in protest. They began the ritual, chanting the incantations and performing the steps as outlined in the grimoires. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the room seemed to stretch and twist, reaching out towards them. The entity appeared more furious and powerful than ever, trying to break through the protective barriers. Emily, realizing the entity was targeting Mark, made the ultimate sacrifice. She pushed Mark out of the circle and took his place, continuing the chant with a newfound determination. The entity lunged at her, but she held her ground, her voice unwavering. As the final words of the incantation left her lips, a blinding light filled the room, and the entity let out a bone-chilling scream before it was pulled into the void. The house fell silent once more, but this time it felt different. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a serene calm. Mark, though devastated by the loss of Emily, felt a sense of peace knowing that the entity was gone for good. He honored Emily's memory by turning the farmhouse into a place of healing, inviting those who had been affected by the entity to find solace and comfort. The town of Hollow Creek slowly began to recover. The dark legacy of the Vandervoort family faded into history, replaced by tales of bravery and sacrifice. Mark, though haunted by memories, found purpose in helping others. Years passed and the farmhouse became a symbol of hope and resilience. Mark never forgot Emily's sacrifice, and he dedicated his life to ensuring that her story would be remembered. But deep in the woods, where the shadows never seemed to lift, a new family moved into Hollow Creek. Drawn by the town's charm and the promise of a fresh start, they purchased an old, abandoned house on the edge of town. As they settled in, strange occurrences began to unfold. The cycle continued, the whispers starting anew, as the darkness that once plagued the Vandervoort house found a new home. The haunting of Hollow Creek was far from over, and the town's dark legacy would live on, a chilling reminder of the past that refused to stay